Hello, and welcome to our presentation of lung function and the effect of COVID-19. We will first be presenting background on what biomedical engineering is. Then, we'll explain what you need to know about how our lungs work before we move into explaining the effect COVID-19 can have on our lungs. Finally, we will walk you through an interactive activity where you can build your own working model of the lungs with simple household materials. The five of us presenting today are all seniors within the Biomedical Engineering department at UW-Madison. Before we start, we'll introduce ourselves.
Hi, my name is Kirsten and I'm from Point Out, Wisconsin.
My name is Jacob Rao and I'm from Eden Prairie, Minnesota.
My name is Andy and I am from Oak Creek, Wisconsin, which is just outside of Milwaukee.
Hi, my name is Jack Metzger and I'm from Buffalo Grove, Illinois.
And I'm Austin, and I'm from Oconomowoc, Wisconsin. To begin, we would like to give an introduction to what biomedical engineering is and the different areas within biomedical engineering. Biomedical engineering is the application of designing and problem-solving techniques to medicine and biology for healthcare purposes. What that means is we take engineering principles and apply them to solving problems within the world of healthcare. For example, as shown in the picture on the top left, we are able to combine knowledge of mechanics, electronics, and the human body to make prosthetics for those who have lost or were born without certain limbs. In the picture on the top right, you can see a biomedical engineer working with something called stem cells that we can tell to become anything within the human body. In the picture on the bottom left, we see a biomedical engineer using various electronic equipment to analyze someone's vital signs. Finally, in the picture on the bottom right, we see a device called an MRI machine, commonly found in hospitals to help doctors determine what is happening within patients who are sick. A biomedical engineer could have helped design, program, or test this machine. As you can probably tell, biomedical engineers can work on a variety of projects, and it's common for us to focus on one specific area. I'll hand off to Kirsten to introduce some of those different areas now.
Thanks, Austin. So one of the pathways of biomedical engineering, which is my personal favorite, is called biomechanics. And biomechanics focuses on how the body moves and how that movement interacts with the outside world. So there are a lot of things that you can do in biomechanics, but the screen shows just a few. I chose to do biomechanics because I was really interested in prosthetics. In the picture on the right, you can actually see someone using a prosthetic hand, and prosthetics are a pretty big part of biomedical engineering, and they use a lot of different technology and are improving really quickly. Some are even able to move almost the same as someone's own hand would. The picture on the left shows someone running, and biomechanical engineers use technology called motion capture to see how the body moves while someone runs, jumps, walks, and more, and they take pictures of this so they can analyze it. This helps people get better after they're injured. And the picture in the middle is what a knee looks like when someone gets a knee replacement. So if someone's own knee isn't working properly anymore and it's hurting them, they may need to replace it with one of these metal pieces that replicates the knee and helps them feel better. Bioinstrumentation is another pathway of biomedical engineering, and this pathway focuses more on the electrical technology, including sensors that can help patients. So I have a question. How many of you have gone to the doctor and they put something on your arm and it gets really tight? I'm guessing most of you have, and this is one example of bioinstrumentation. So engineers have created this technology that can measure the blood pressure within someone's body without a doctor or a nurse having to do it themselves. So this is the picture on the left. The picture on the right shows an EKG, and this measures the electrical signals that are being sent through someone's heart that actually tell the heart to beat. So if someone's heart isn't working properly, the doctors can see that using this machine. Bioinstrumentation also helps with prosthetics, like we had talked about before, and it can make the prosthetics respond to your brain when your brain wants them to move. So even though some of these may look like just a screen to the patient, they actually use a lot of sensors and wiring and software to help make these devices that can help people. So I have one more question for you. How many of you have had to go to the doctor and get an x-ray? Maybe you had a broken bone and they needed to x-ray that, or maybe you went to the dentist and they wanted to take an x-ray of your teeth. So this is the medical imaging pathway of biomedical engineering. And here engineers use different forms of technology to take pictures of different parts of the brain or body. So x-rays are usually what's used for bones, but there are other types of images such as MRIs or CT scans, and these can be used to take pictures of the brain or the organs. And one big benefit of this type of technology is that doctors can see what's actually wrong inside of the body. So if someone has a broken bone, they're able to see just where that bone is broken and what the best treatment is so that that person can heal quickly and in the best way. So now Andy is going to talk to you about tissue engineering and how the lungs function.
Thank you, Kirsten. Another branch of biomedical engineering is called tissue engineering. Every person is made up of what's called cells that perform all the functions that keep us alive, such as beating our heart, such as fighting off infections, and even telling our muscles to move. That's done through cells. And each body is made up of over 30 trillion cells. So there's a lot that needs to go on to make sure every one of those cells is working properly. So if you've ever gotten a cut before, you'll see a scab start to form on your skin, and then you'll actually see your skin start to grow back. But the issue is not all tissues can do that, can regenerate themselves. So what tissue engineers do is they take that knowledge and they use chemistry to actually make other tissues that normally don't grow back to repair any damage that's been done. So you can see in this video here, this is an example of how intricate this process is. So you can see these are cardiac cells, which are cells in your heart beating together. So if any of this tissue is damaged, it's really important to make sure that they can get the cells to match so the same function can be performed as the normal tissue. So to understand how breathing works, you first need to understand a law that's called Boyles Law. And Boyles Law relates the volume that a gas takes up, or the space that a gas takes up, and the pressure that's felt by that gas. So as you can see in the line graph here, as volume increases by Boyles Law, so as you move to the right, you'll actually see pressure decrease. So this can be applied to when you're breathing. So when you first start to breathe in, the muscles around your lung, called your diaphragm, will actually contract and get really, really tight. And this will pull your lungs down and out. And this will increase the volume of your lung space, as you can see here. And because by Boyle's law, as the volume increases, that means the pressure decreases in your lungs. And gas will always want to move from an area of high pressure to an area of low pressure where there's less stuff to bump around into. So when this volume increases and the pressure decreases, you will actually have air come into your body. And then when you're ready to exhale, the muscles around your lungs, the diaphragm, will actually relax and it'll be less stretching on your lungs. So that volume will decrease. And by Boyle's law, as the volume decreases, that means the pressure increases because there's not as much space for the gas to move around. So with that high pressure in here, the gas will move out of your body and you'll exhale. And inside your lungs, there's actually a whole bunch of little branches that you can see here called bronchioles. So instead, as the air comes into your body, it goes through all these little tunnels inside your lungs, and it ends up at these little air sacs called alveoli, which are like tiny little balloons. And they're very, very thin, so the gas can actually travel across this tissue and get into your body. So when the gas comes in, you inhale what's called oxygen, and it'll get into your body and go to these alveoli, and it'll pass through them and actually get into all these little blood vessels that you can see that are around the alveoli. And then it'll go into your body, and then it's used when you break down all the food that you take in and all the nutrients that you take in. Oxygen is used in the process to break it all down. And then as a result of it, it gives off what's called carbon dioxide. So that carbon dioxide will travel back through the blood, back towards your lungs, and travel through these alveoli and then travel out, and you'll exhale carbon dioxide. And now Jack is going to talk about what happens when these alveoli aren't working properly.
Thanks, Andy. So with viral infections like COVID-19, they're very dangerous and they need to be fought off by our bodies so that they don't take over the cells that we need to control the functions that are important for survival. So the body has a number of different cells that can fight infections like this, and it gets these cells to the infection site by increasing the blood flow to that area of your body. That's commonly referred to as inflammation, and inflammation is typically a good thing, as it means that your body's responding to these different infections in a proper way. But too much inflammation can be a bad thing. So with an extremely infectious disease like COVID-19 that can be transmitted through the air, it can get all the way into your respiratory system before your body's actually prepared to fight it. So when the inflammation and the buildup of fluid occurs within your alveoli, it can make that gas exchange a little bit more difficult. And that makes it harder to breathe. And the fluid buildup in your lungs causes a condition called pneumonia. So when someone's severely infected with a disease like COVID-19, especially if it's traveled into the patient's lungs, someone can become too sick or weak to do the process of breathing, especially if they have pneumonia symptoms. So ventilators are artificial breathing machines that can help them breathe more easily. They consist of this central panel where a doctor or nurse can monitor the patient's progress and control the airflow into the patient's lungs. That's done by these tubes that run into the patient's mouth and then go through the windpipe into the lungs. And they also have a pipe that leaves the lungs to take out any of the carbon dioxide and other waste that is produced when we breathe. So these are a life-saving tool that because they can be operated while the patient's awake or asleep, and it's an important tool in hospital settings because they can help keep COVID patients alive if they have a severe infection. So now it's your turn. So we're going to have Jacob walk you guys through an activity to build your own set of model lungs, and you guys can see how these affect the body when you have a disease like COVID.
In order to make the anatomical model of the lungs, you'll need some supplies, including 2 rubber bands, 2 small balloons, 1 big balloon, some tape, can be Scotch tape, packing tape, whatever you got, some scissors, a 2-liter bottle with its cap, and 2 straws. The first step is to take the label off of the clear 2-liter bottle so that you can see the inside. Secondly, cut the bottle in half using scissors. This upper portion of the bottle will act as the chest cavity where the lower respiratory system resides. The third step is to use scissors to slowly and carefully drill 2 holes into the bottle cap by spinning 1 scissor blade. Make the holes big enough that a straw could fit snugly through them. If this is too difficult, making 1 hole can also work, but more tape will be needed to make sure that no air escapes. Once the second hole has been created, you can screw the cap back onto the bottle. I'm just showing here that straws can fit through both holes. But again, if this step's too hard, you can combine these 2 holes into one and use more tape later on. The fourth step is to, using a rubber band, tie 2 balloons onto the end of 2 straws, like you're tying a ponytail in someone's hair. Do this until the balloon inflates when you blow into the straw and it doesn't leak. The balloons represent the lungs, and the straws represent the trachea and bronchi. The lungs contain the alveoli, which are the small sacs that allow oxygen to enter the blood. The bronchi are the tubes that the oxygen comes down to from the trachea and the mouth and the nose. You can see I'm getting this last one done. And as you can see, it's nice and tight. The fifth step is to take the ends of each bronchus and put them through the holes in the cap, leaving the lungs to reside in the chest cavity. You want to make sure that the lungs are high enough up that they're kind of centered in the bottle. The sixth step is to, if your holes in your cap are not airtight, to secure them with tape so that the straws don't fall down into the bottle and also don't allow air to escape from around them. As you can see here, I'm putting on just a little bit of tape, but if you've just made one hole, you'll have to put a little bit more and thread it between the two straws so that it is truly airtight. Try to leave the lungs about halfway up in the bottle. And as you can see, everything is airtight. Next, you're going to cut and stretch the diaphragm balloon over the end of the bottle. And the first step is to cut the diaphragm balloon. So you're going to cut the end off of a balloon and you're going to make little slits into it to maximize its surface area. And as you can see, I'm able to stretch it pretty far. Now, we used a small balloon, so it's much tougher to get it around the end. But if you use a larger balloon, it should be much easier. As you can see, after it's been stretched over the end and taped, it all looks nice and cohesive. Now, normally this end should be circular, but in our case, it was a little bit tight. So this stretched balloon represents the diaphragm muscle, and as you pull it in and out, it will adjust the volume of the lungs. So by pulling down on the balloon, you're simulating the diaphragm contracting, which inflates the lungs. And this is what happens when you breathe in. When you let go and the diaphragm relaxes, the lungs deflate, and this is what happens when you breathe out. So thank you so much for following along, and we hope you learned something cool.